Ever since the release of Immortal Empires, we have been neglecting one unit that has since gotten very strong. Yes, we're going to look at the Zoats today. Recently, I've been playing some Wood Elf battles and I realized the Zoats received some significant buffs. Technically, CA did not try to adjust this unit, but the changes to the Lore of Life magic does affect them immensely. As usual, let's start with looking at the unit stats. The Zoats don't exactly have the greatest stats for their cost, with only 60 armor and rather mediocre leadership at 65 at base value. They don't have the greatest melee stats either, with only 30 attack and 40 melee defense. For a monstrous unit that costs 1,700 gold, you'd definitely expect more from them. Luckily, they compensate this with their impressive weapon strength at 100. Combined with their anti-large, they can definitely dish out some pain against large enemy units, though their damage output is still a bit limited due to their low charge bonus. Just from looking at the stats alone, they're too expensive for what they can bring to the battlefield. If you want durability, you're probably better off with just Treekin and Treemen with their heavily armored bark. For anti-large or armor-piercing damage, you're definitely better off with the Wood Elf Missile Play, or in melee, Eternal Guards and Stag Knight. That is why Zoats were never a popular choice among Wood Elf players, and that continued well into Game 3. With less people playing them, of course there are less people noticing their changes. The first big change is that healing has been overhauled in Immortal Empires and is now stronger than ever before. This is a direct buff to Zoats since they all have some form of healing. Regular Zoats have Earth Blood while the Regiment of Renown version has Regrowth. By bringing Zoats to the battlefield, Wood Elf players can now spam the now improved healing without spending any winds of magic. This allows the Wood Elf players to cast other spells while maintaining the same healing output. And if you bring multiple Zoats, not only can you get extra casts of Earth Blood, you can also spam them without needing to wait for a cooldown, maximizing the now buffed healing to sustain your units in any situation. Of course, healing isn't the only thing the Zoats can do. They do have a second bound spell, the Flesh to Stone, adding 60% physical resistance to whatever unit it targets. Now, this synergizes extremely well with the Wood Elf roster, since a good chunk of their roster has one kind of resistance or the other. The War Dancers and its variant War Dancers, Azrael Spears, and Blade Singers all have 20% physical resistance. All the Deer Cavalry, including the Stag Knights, have at least 20% physical resistance, while the Ethereal Lost Silver Knights have 55% instead. And all the tree units also has 20% physical resistance. And then there's the Forest Dragon, which not only has 20% physical resistance, but also 25% missile resistance. All these innate resistances stacks with Flesh to Stone. Simply dump the spell onto one of these Wood Elf units and suddenly they are now extremely tanky with 80% physical resistance. And if you brought multiple Zoats, congratulations, you now have multiple extremely tanky units. This actually compensates for one of the biggest weaknesses of the entire Wood Elf roster, their extremely fragile units. Even the Glass Cannon Wild Riders can hold themselves pretty well in sustained combat as long as the spell is active. They can shrug off melee attacks and volleys of missile fire that normally they are quite susceptible to. Even the tree units can benefit from this spell, as the physical resistance can save them from armor-piercing damage where the heavy armor cannot, especially when they're being hit by armor-piercing missiles like bullets and cannonballs, with their large hitbox making them quite easy to get hit. As for the Zoats themselves, they benefit the most from Flesh to Stone when they're being shot at. While their scaly skin does grant them 25% missile resistance, their mediocre armor at 60 and their large hitbox means that they'll still take substantial damage under focused fire. But with Flesh to Stone activated, they now have plus 60 physical resistance, and combined with missile resistance of 25%, they have a total of 85% damage reduction against physical missiles, almost maxing out that damage reduction. Now, don't let the Zoats' supportive spells fool you. They are not only a defensive unit, but also great at offense as long as they are fighting the right target. With their magical attacks, armor piercing, and anti-large, this makes them great monster hunters, especially against Chaos Demons. With their decent speed at 64 and great unit mass, they can also effectively catch up and pin down enemy cavalry and chariots alike, with the traditional Wood Elf missiles being rather vulnerable to all the chaos mobility in the current meta. The Zoats offer a great alternative for fighting large enemies. But this is not the end of the Zoats' offensive power. They also have an interesting contact effect called dampening. It allows them to reduce enemy spell resistance by 20. And as the Wood Elves, you can further reduce the spell resistance by another 20% with the Branch Wraiths, the other Trickster's Shard. That's a total of 40% spell resistance debuff. As a result, the Exalted Bloodletters, who normally has 25% spell resistance, now have their protection completely ripped away by all these Wood Elf debuffs. Similar debuff stacking can also be done to other units, for example, Volkmar the Grim, Knights of Blazing Sun, and also the Dwarves. This allows the Wood Elves to damage them with spells efficiently, no longer suffering from the damage reduction. Just like here with the Exalted Bloodletters being targeted by Malkov's Mystifying Miasma. Their physical resistance doesn't work against the spell, and they no longer has any spell resistance, so all they can do is just sit there and take all the damage, making spell damage against Khorne viable once more. Overall, Zoats are an excellent supporting unit. They protect by using their bound spell, Flesh to Stone, to grant other units additional physical resistance. They attack with their large stone maces with great armor-piercing anti-large, and they themselves having enough speed to keep up with enemy mobility. Their magic damage and their dampening effect certainly helps when their targets have some form of resistance either against physical damage or spell damage. And finally, and the most important of all, they have your back with all that healing. In this current meta where healing is so strong, there are certainly battles where you want to bring the Zoats just to get some additional Earth Bloods without costing Winds of Magic. In multiplayer battles, you can bring 3 Zoats max, and that is 6 Earth Bloods in total. With all the buffs and healing, the Zoats can provide great protection to the Wood Elf units, which are usually quite glass cannon, sustaining them in prolonged combat and minimizing their losses. While Zoats were not a strong unit in Game 2, they are now certainly a formidable force to reckon with, capable of spamming some of the most effective spells in the game while dishing out the pain against monsters and cavalry alike with their giant stone maces.